The life and sad ending of Jimmie Rodgers. Jimmie Rodgers was born on September 8, 1897, in Meridian, Mississippi, U.S. Rodgers' affinity for entertaining came at an early age, and the lure of the road was irresistible to him. By age 13, he had twice organized and begun traveling shows, only to be brought home by his father. Rodgers' mother died when he was about 6 or 7 years old, and Rodgers, the youngest of 3 sons, spent the next few years living with various relatives in southeast Mississippi and southwest Alabama, near Geiger. In the 1900 census for Daleville, Lauderdale County, Mississippi, Jimmie's mother, Eliza Rodgers, was listed as already having had 7 children, with 4 of them still living at that date. Jimmie was probably born 6th of the 7 children. He eventually returned home to live with his father, Aaron Rodgers, a maintenance-of-way foreman on the Mobile and Ohio Railroad, who had settled with a new wife in Meridian. His father found Rodgers his first job working on the railroad, as a water boy. Here he was further taught to pick and strum by rail workers and hobos. As a water boy, he would have been exposed to the work chants of the African American railroad workers, known as Gandhi dancers. A few years later, he became a brakeman on the New Orleans and Northeastern Railroad, a position formerly held by his oldest brother, Walter, who had been promoted to the conductor on the line running between Meridian and New Orleans. Rodgers married Carrie Cecil Williamson. The couple had 2 daughters, Carrie Anita Rodgers and June Rebecca Rodgers, who died at 6 months in 1923. What he experienced are things that are unbearable for others. Rodgers' affinity for entertaining came at an early age, and the lure of the road was irresistible to him. By age 13, he had twice organized and begun traveling shows, only to be brought home by his father. His father found Rodgers his first job working on the railroad, as a water boy. Here he was further taught to pick and strum by rail workers and hobos. As a water boy, he would have been exposed to the work chants of the African American railroad workers, known as Gandhi dancers. A few years later, he became a brakeman on the New Orleans and Northeastern Railroad, a position formerly held by his oldest brother, Walter, who had been promoted to the conductor on the line running between Meridian and New Orleans. Rodgers decided to travel to Asheville, North Carolina, later that same year. On April 18, 1927, at 9:30 p.m., Jimmie and Otis Kuykendall performed for the first time on WWNC, Asheville's first radio station. A few months later, Rodgers recruited a group from Bristol, Tennessee, called the Tenova Ramblers, and secured a weekly slot on the station as the Jimmie Rodgers Entertainers. In late July 1927, Rodgers' bandmates learned that Ralph Peer, a representative of the Victor Talking Machine Company, was coming to Bristol to hold an audition for local musicians, later to become known as the Bristol Sessions. Rodgers and the group arrived in Bristol on August 3, 1927, and auditioned for Peer in an empty warehouse. August 4, Jimmie Rodgers completed his first session for Victor in Bristol. It lasted from 2 p.m. to 4:20 p.m. and yielded 2 songs, The Soldier's Sweetheart and Sleep, Baby, Sleep. For the test recordings, Rodgers received $100. The recordings were released on October 7, earning modest success. In November, Rodgers determined more than ever to make it in entertainment, headed to New York City in an effort to arrange another session with Peer. Rodgers requested that his sister-in-law, Elsie McWilliams, a musician, help him write some songs. She would become his most frequent songwriting partner. She co-wrote or wrote nearly 40 songs for Rodgers. Rodgers went to the Victor Studios in Camden, New Jersey, and recorded 4 more sides, including Blue Yodel. Better known as T for Texas, it featured a yodel Rodgers claimed to have learned after he caught a troupe of Swiss emissaries doing a demonstration at a church. In the next 2 years, this recording sold nearly 500,000 copies, rocketing Rodgers to stardom. After this, he determined when Pierre and Victor would record him, and sold out shows whenever and wherever he played. Over the next few years, Rodgers stayed very busy. He did a movie short for Columbia Pictures, The Singing Brakeman, which today appears on the DVD and VHS compilation Times Ain't Like They Used to Be, early rural and popular music from rare original film masters 1928 to 1935, and on YouTube, and made various recordings across the country. He performed on a bill with humorist Will Rogers as part of a Red Cross tour across the Midwest. On July 16, 1930, he recorded Blue Yodel No. 9 with Louis Armstrong on trumpet and Armstrong's wife Lil on piano. A song written by Clayton McMitchin and recorded as Prohibition Has Done Me Wrong was not issued, possibly because of copyright conflicts with Columbia, though to Juanita McMitchin Lynch, who Pierre felt it was too controversial for the times. The master was put aside and subsequently lost. In August 1932, Rodgers' next to last recordings were made in Camden, and tuberculosis clearly was getting the better of him. He had given up touring by that time but did have a weekly radio show in San Antonio, Texas, where he had relocated when T for Texas became a hit. It was not in Rodgers' makeup to stay still, though, and his constant touring and recording schedule only hurt his chances of recovery. With the country in the grip of the Great Depression, the expense of making field recordings resulted in the practice quickly fading. So, in May 1933, Rodgers traveled again to New York City for a group of sessions beginning May 17. He started these recordings alone and completed 4 songs on the first day. When he returned to the studio after a day's rest, he had to record sitting down, and soon retired to his hotel in hopes of regaining enough energy to finish the songs he had been rehearsing. The recording engineer hired 2 session musicians to help Rodgers when he returned a few days later. Together they recorded a few songs, including Mississippi Delta Blues. For his last recording of the session, Rodgers chose to perform alone, and as a matching bookend to his career recorded years ago. During this final recording session, Rodgers was so weakened from years of fighting tuberculosis that he had a nurse accompanying him on May 24, and needed to rest on a cot between songs. He died 2 days later. Jimmie Rodgers made a surprise comeback in 1955 when country star Hank Snow, his band the Rainbow Ranch Boys, and guitarist Chet Atkins recorded new instrumental backings to Rodgers' old solo performances. These were issued by RCA Victor and credited to Jimmie Rodgers and the Rainbow Ranch Boys. Was an American singer-songwriter and musician who rose to popularity in the late 1920s. Widely regarded as the father of country music, he is best known for his distinctive rhythmic yodeling. Unusual for a music star of his era, Rodgers rose to prominence based upon his recordings, among country music's earliest, rather than concert performances, which followed to similar public acclaim. He has been cited as an inspiration by many artists and inductees into various halls of fame across both country music and the blues, in which he was also a pioneer. Among his other popular nicknames are the Singing Brakeman and the Blue Yodeler. The story ends his life. Rodgers was a guest at the Taft Hotel in New York City in May 1933 while working on several days of studio recordings. After completing them, he died there on May 26, 1933, from a pulmonary hemorrhage brought on by tuberculosis. He was 35 years old. At that time he accounted for fully 10% of RCA Victor's sales, in a drastically depressed record market. Fellow Meridian, Mississippi native Steve Forbert's tribute album to Jimmie Rodgers, Any Old Time, was nominated for a 2004 Grammy Award in the Best Traditional Folk category. On May 24, 1978, the United States Postal Service issued a 13-cent commemorative stamp honoring Rodgers, the first in its long-running performing arts series. The stamp was designed by Jim Sharp and depicted Rodgers with brakeman's outfit and guitar, standing in front of a locomotive giving his famous 2 thumbs up gesture.